The night smelled of dust and desperation. The wide Texas sky stretched endless and black above the prairie, a dome of stars that seemed to watch every secret, every sorrow. Out of that darkness, a girl came running, barefoot, breathless, her long hair flying behind her like a flag of surrender. The dry earth cut into her feet, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Behind her lay the farm, the place she had once called home, and behind that, a life carved in pain. Her name was Clara Mayfield, and though she was only 19, she carried the weary soul of someone who had lived twice as long. The farm was her father's kingdom, a place built by calloused hands and bitter words. What had once been rows of corn and cattle fields had turned into something colder, a prison where kindness never grew. Clara had endured the hard days, the long nights, the sharp words that cut deeper than the lash of any whip. But tonight, when her father raised his hand one time too many, something inside her broke loose. Without a coat, without shoes, she ran into the wild silence of the prairie. The wind bit at her skin, and stones pressed sharp into her heels, but freedom tasted sweeter than the pain. She told herself she would keep running until her legs gave out, until she found a place where no one knew her name, where no one's anger could chain her spirit anymore. Yet, as the night deepened, fear grew alongside the courage. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the wide prairie was no place for a girl alone. Miles away, a cowboy rode the trail under that same endless sky. His name was Luke Carson, a drifter with a weathered hat pulled low and a heart that carried more than its share of scars. He had seen the world's rough edges, cattle drives gone wrong, saloon fights that left more than bruises, the long loneliness of nights without a soul to trust. But Luke had also seen moments of grace. Hands extended in kindness when he had nothing, strangers who gave bread when hunger gnawed him hollow. Those moments stayed with him like campfire embers, reminding him that the world, though harsh, still held sparks of light. It was the sound that first drew him, the faint, desperate rhythm of feet striking dirt. Luke reined in his horse, ears sharp. In the silver wash of moonlight, he spotted her, a figure darting across the prairie, wild and fragile, like a bird that had broken free from a cage. For a moment, he thought she was a ghost, some restless spirit roaming the night. But then he saw the way her shoulders shook, the stumble in her steps, the very real exhaustion dragging at her. He didn't think. He nudged his horse forward. Clara heard hooves pounding behind her and froze in terror. She spun, heart hammering, half expecting her father had sent someone after her. Instead, she saw a cowboy, a stranger, tall in the saddle, his silhouette cutting strong against the moonlight. Panic surged in her chest. Should she run again? Trust was a luxury she could not afford. Luke slowed his horse, holding out a hand, his voice calm but steady. "Easy there, miss. I ain't here to hurt you." Clara's breath came in ragged gasps, and her eyes glistened with both defiance and fear. "Stay back," she warned, her voice trembling. Luke nodded, keeping a respectful distance. "All right. I'll stay right here. But you're out here barefoot, middle of the night. You'll tear your feet to pieces before you make it anywhere safe." Her lips quivered, but she said nothing. Luke could see it, the war inside her between pride and desperation. He dismounted slowly, making sure not to startle her, and placed the reins loosely over his arm. "My name's Luke," he said gently. "I don't know what you're running from, but I can tell you this, whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." Something in his tone, the quiet steadiness, broke through her fear. Clara's knees buckled beneath her, and she sank to the dirt. For the first time since leaving the farm, she let the tears come. Luke moved closer, kneeling beside her, but careful not to touch. "You're safe now," he whispered. And in that moment, without knowing why, she believed him. The ride back on Luke's horse was silent at first. Clara clung to the saddle horn, too weary to speak, while Luke guided them through the prairie trails. He could feel her trembling behind him, not just from the cold but from the weight of a life unlived, a story untold. When dawn crept over the horizon, painting the world gold, Clara finally found her voice. She told him about the farm, about her father's temper that grew worse with every bottle, about the nights she prayed for freedom but never believed it would come. Her words came halting, as though each one was a stone pulled from deep water. Luke listened, his jaw tight. He knew what it was to be trapped. Not by a father, but by the world itself, by debts and choices that chained him. And he knew what it meant when someone extended a hand, lifting you when you couldn't lift yourself. By the time they reached the small town of Red Rock, Clara was too weak to walk. Luke carried her into the inn, his arms steady as if holding something precious. The townsfolk looked on curiously, but no one asked questions. Perhaps they sensed that some stories were written in silence. Over the weeks that followed, Luke helped Clara find work at the bakery, where the kindly widow who owned it welcomed her with open arms. Clara's hands, once blistered from farm labor, learned to knead dough, to dust loaves with flour, to create something that filled the air with warmth instead of fear. She began to smile again, shy at first, but then with a light that surprised even her. Luke drifted in and out of town, but he always returned. Each time, Clara noticed the way his eyes softened when he saw her, the way his rough exterior melted in her presence. And Luke noticed something, too, the way Clara, despite all she had endured, carried a gentleness that healed others. When a child scraped his knee outside the bakery, she was the first to comfort him. When the widow grew tired, Clara took on extra hours without complaint. One evening, as the sun set fire to the horizon, Clara turned to Luke and said softly, "You didn't just save me that night. You gave me a life I never thought I could have." Luke looked at her for a long moment, then tipped his hat, his voice rough with emotion. "No, Clara. You saved yourself. I just happened to be riding by." But deep inside, both of them knew the truth. Sometimes, the right person arriving at the right moment could change everything. Months passed, and the farm became a memory Clara no longer feared. She found family not by blood but by kindness. In the widow's laughter, in the children who adored her pastries, in the cowboy who kept showing up no matter how far the trail called him. One night, under the same endless stars that had once witnessed her flight, Clara stood beside Luke on the edge of town. The prairie stretched wide and free before them. She slipped her hand into his, barefoot again, but this time not from running, from choosing. And in that quiet moment, Clara realized something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The world could be cruel, but it could also be kind. Pain could shape you, but compassion could set you free. Because sometimes, salvation wasn't a miracle from the heavens, it was just a cowboy on a horse, choosing to stop, choosing to care. And that choice had made all the difference. Sparkle's final message. Kindness has the power to rewrite stories. Even in the harshest places, a single act of compassion can become the bridge from despair to hope. Clara's escape was not just from her father's farm, it was into a future where humanity, love, and selflessness could finally take root.